That's right. You read the title correctly. Step 1 of Exaforge is here. To understand what Step 1 is, we need to back up a little bit. Exaforge is a space-based RTS game. That means a lot of things, but the important thing to know today is that there will be multiple different types of quote-unquote players. For example, in single-player games, there will be one or more computer players that the player will play against. And in multiplayer games, there will also be human players, but they will connect via the internet and not be running the game directly on your machine. I don't want to send player input directly to your game over the internet. And similarly, I don't want to have the computer players simulate an actual player clicking the mouse and typing on the keyboard to get their actions into the game. In my view, that would be a waste of time and a waste of resources. So instead, what I plan to do is have a common interface that the game will translate user input into. And similarly, it'll translate the computer player's decisions into this common interface. This makes it easy to ensure that computers and players and remote players all have the same set of actions that they can perform in the game, and it also saves me the trouble of trying to make the computers simulate what an actual player would do. And getting that common interface working is what I've been working on lately in Exaforge, and I like to call it the action system. And today I can showcase the very first action that I have implemented in Exaforge, harvesting resources. Let me open up the game and show you. Okay, so what you can see here is what you've seen before. Well, let me just make this full screen. There we go. With a couple of notable differences. Now, this timer is counting down. And now the other main thing that you haven't seen before is this little overlay, which I admit looks pretty terrible right now. But here, you'll notice this harvest resource button. And if I click it, my total currency went up and my total work hours down. And they went down in proportion to the yield of the planet. So if I find a planet that has a different yield, say this one, the amount of work hours I lose by harvesting resources will be smaller. Yep, see, there you go. And then when it gets to 0, my work hours reset. And again, we go, I harvest some power, and if I get down to fewer work hours than I would need to harvest, I can no longer harvest. Now, this may not seem like a lot. And you might be thinking to yourself, I could implement that in 5 minutes. And you're probably right. You probably could. This isn't much to speak of. But what it is it's the first step towards a complete game. And the reason is this. I needed to get the action system working before I could make anything happen in the game. And now it is working. And one other thing that I did behind the scenes in order to get the statistics incrementing correctly is I implemented a statistics manager. But that's a story for another day. So the important thing to know is that with the action system in place, I will now be able to implement more significant features, like moving ships from planet to planet, like building ships, like attacking other players. So while it doesn't seem like much right now, this truly is the first step towards making Exaforge a game and not simply a tech demo. So that might not be all that exciting, but I think that things that you'll see in the future will be pretty exciting. For example, while you might not see too many changes in the next video I put out, because I plan to work next on cleaning stuff up behind the scenes and making sure things are just working well and making the UI not terrible, one change you will see is improvements to planet generation. Right now, as you can see, these planets are just pretty much splattered all over the map, kind of randomly and very unattractively. And that's going to change. In the next video, I hope to be able to showcase a more rational map generation system where planets are distributed according to a more specified system that places them in more reasonable locations. And from there, I'll really begin to start building out major features. After that, I'm going to implement first abilities to build ships and colonize other planets. So, I thank you for joining me on this brief update to Exaforge. If any of this sounds interesting and you'd like to keep up with Exaforge, or if you just liked the video, please hit the like button, and if you want to hear more about Exaforge, please consider subscribing. I don't know how often I'll be posting these videos, but you can be sure that this is the best place to hear about Exaforge in the future. So that's all for now. Thank you for joining me.